Good morning and welcome back to Trinidad and Tobago, where we continue with the program. It's time for a much anticipated Tobago segment. And the Tobago's Writers Guild is hosting an event to showcase the published works of authors in Tobago. Joining us from a studio in Tobago, we have authors Mervyn O'Neill and Rodney Pigott. And Mr. Pigott is also the president of the Tobago's Writers Guild. Good morning and welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Berna.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning. My first question, this goes to Mr. Pigott. I'd like to ask you, what exactly is the Tobago's Writers Guild all about, and what exactly is its purpose?
The Tobago Writers Guild was founded back in 2007 by some concerned authors and literary agents in Tobago, such as Deborah Moore Miggins, Lorraine Boyce Phillips, in order to foster a literary arts culture in Tobago. Since then, we put on a number of programs yearly in order to bring that about. Let me state that this particular endeavor was actually formed by an ad hoc committee called the Tobago Authors Committee. So while the idea of having this Tobago Book Fest was founded within the conversation of the Tobago Writers Guild, it was expanded out to include authors and members that were not members of the Tobago Writers Guild. So this particular venture we attribute to the Tobago Authors Committee.
Wonderful. And Mr. O'Neill, would you say that this venture has been a success?
Well, it is the pilot project. We are hoping to include literature in Tobago's heritage festivals. So we would be better able to answer your question after the fact on Tuesday, the 24th of July, coming Tuesday. But all our expectations are that it would be a success.
All right. And how do you feel about this initiative so far?
I am quite excited about it because I see great potential and great need. In fact, we hope to conduct a second session in September focused mainly on schools, the upper classes. We hope to insert literature in Tobago's heritage as a permanent fixture.
Wonderful. And Mr. Pigott, how important is it, this idea to incorporate literature in Tobago's Heritage Festival?
It's vital. We know that as a nation, we have the sports, entertainment as high-ticket items. Education is a high-ticket item where students are sent abroad to study, to become the high-profile type of professions. Literature is often something that is not regarded as high-profile, yet it is the very basis of building a society. And so we endeavor to bring literature, reading, comprehension, bring those values into the mainstream so that our young people particularly can see these areas as an avenue to achieve in life.
Wonderful. And Mr. O'Neill, do you agree that literature has been sidelined?
Very definitely. Literature has been sidelined under a number of headings, but I will point to two. With technology being where it is, and all the younger generation having gravitated to their cell phones and that form of media, traditional literature has taken something of a back seat. In the second instance, looking at literature from Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago, and even Caribbean point of view, we have found that through the colonial flavored education that we in the Caribbean are fed with, our local literature has been given a backstage, and we need to begin to bring this forward.
All right. So I'm glad you raised that point. Mr. Pigott, Mr. O'Neill would have mentioned that with the advent of technology, traditional literature has essentially taken a back seat. However, some would argue that with the advent of technology, literature can now be propelled to a new dimension. Do you see that happening?
Of course. There can be, and there must be, a graduation, if you will, of the traditional literature into the technological age. But in order to do that, there has to be an appreciation for the traditional literature. There has to be an appreciation for books, for opening a book and reading that book, so that when you go to your cell phone to open a book and read a book, you have that appreciation built in. If you don't, then it simply becomes another video game that will soon go by the wayside until the new form of technology comes into a view. So an appreciation for traditional literature must be highlighted, and that is our attempt.
Great. Now, how do we instill that culture back into our kids? And let's talk a little bit about the role of parents in all of this. What would you like to say?
Parents must encourage children to read. Parents themselves must be encouraged to read. There has to be time out from TV, time out from the video games. Let's go to the library, open a book. Every child on the island should have a library card. And the library should be engaged in a way where it's not just a place for children to go and hang out after school, but a place where they should go and be encouraged to read, get into reading sessions. So yes, it's very, very important that not only the children be engaged and be encouraged to read, but also the parents themselves must also be encouraged to read.
And Mr. O'Neill, I'd like to get your comments on that point as well. What role do parents have to play in all of this?
I will start with the obvious, and then without being too long-winded, I will point some of the problems. Parents definitely have a role to play in their children's education. In fact, education, to be effective, must be a marriage between the child's activity and the parents' involvement. Now, to point to the problem, and this I can be somewhat subjective, there is a huge gap between the young people today and parents. And that gap has to be narrowed before we can bring this marriage between the child and his parent. Statistically, we note that a very low percentage of parents today in Trinidad and Tobago have been to secondary school and beyond. Whereas for the last 20 years or so, all the students go on to secondary school. There is a gap there. We can expect or hope that the parent is able to assist the child. But 80% of these parents have not been to secondary school. This is a matter that we need to look at.
Very well said. And Mr. Pigott, let's talk a little bit about the event. How many authors and books will be on display?
We'll have a total of about 8 authors on display this year. We will also showcase many other authors, some of whom are no longer with us, and some who may be abroad. And when you review, as I did, and saw the sheer number of authors attributed to either Tobago connection, being that they were born in Tobago, or have written extensively on Tobago, the numbers could not fit on our program. And on our program, we dedicated an entire back page to listing those authors that are attributed to Tobago, and we could not fit all of their names on that back page. So it's a very exciting to really see how many authors there are in Tobago and of Tobago.
Wonderful. And Mr. Pigott, I'd like to ask you, Mr. O'Neill rather, how would you describe your style of writing, and have you written extensively on Tobago as well?
Personally, I have written an analytical history of Tobago. Again, it is looking at effect rather than stating dates and the traditional history. So that points towards style. I am more concerned about solution than about just information for what it is worth. I am also the editor of a Tobago Voice magazine. Now, I have lived abroad for close to 50 years in the United States, and it has been and remains my objective to connect the local people with the diaspora. That is one of the pointed objectives of the Tobago Voice magazine. I am pretty close to publishing another book titled The Party Politics and Democracy in Trinidad and Tobago. It's my personal views and reactions to social matters in Trinidad and Tobago.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Mr. O'Neill. And Mr. Pigott, I'd like to ask you, who are invited to this event and when is it?
Everyone is invited to this event. It is going to be held on July 24th. That's Tuesday, as Mr. O'Neill said, that's this coming Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. at the Ann Gift Auditorium, Tobago Library. We also would like to thank the Heritage Commission for making this event a part of Tobago Heritage Festival, and we hope to make this an annual event that will be part of the Tobago Heritage Festival going forward.
Is there a number to call for further information?
I will give my number. It's 323-1958, 1958. And if we did not add, let us add now, it's a free event.
That's wonderful. I was about to ask you the cost. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. What are your closing comments at this time?
We look forward to people within the range of our voices to join us, whether in person or otherwise. We know that there are many in Trinidad and across Tobago who have contributed to our literature, and we are hoping to have them come out or join us in one way or the other.
Thank you so much, Mr. O'Neill. And thank you also to Mr. Rodney Piggott, author and president of the Tobago Writers Guild. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vernon.
Thank you, Berna.
You're most welcome. We hope to have many more conversations like these as we follow up on this event. Of course, their plans are to make it an annual event. And of course, we've been chatting with authors Mervyn O'Neill and Mr. Rodney Piggott, talking to us there about the Tobago's Writers Guild. Well, we take a short break for the travel weather. A lot more when we return.